but I think people still know what an icon is, and Rolex is definitely one of them.
Long before wristwatches became popular, stopwatches were the most frequently used. They were carried around by everyone because, as they were more reliable than wristwatches. However, in the early 19th century, a young orphan boy rose up to the challenge and came up with a revolutionary idea that changed the whole of the watch industry. Today, this idea to create quality and precise wristwatches has gained wide acceptance, defying every oddity associated with it in the past. This watch model is called Rolex, and the man who would bring this dream into reality is none other than Hans Wilsdorf. Hans Wilsdorf was born on March 22, 1881 in Kulmbach, Germany. He was the second of 3 children and enjoyed a happy childhood. His parents owned a business where they sold ironworks, and they were pretty well-to-do. However, Hans was faced with a saddening report. In 1892, his mom died due to a sickness, and that following year, he lost his dad. His parents' deaths changed everything. With this, his uncle took him and his brothers with them to another town and sold the family business. The money derived was used to send the boys to a good school. However, Hans was not happy with this decision. He found it hard to cope with his new neighborhood and was frequently made fun of because of his religion. This led to depression. With the realization that he could barely do anything, he decided to accept his fate and move on with life. As a result, he got serious with his academics and even had to learn how to communicate in English fluently. Little did he know that he was building up for himself a great future. While in school, he frequently heard much about the French culture in Switzerland and how La Chaux de Fonds was a premier place for watchmaking. This sparked Wilsdorf's interest in Swiss watchmaking industry, and after his graduation, he moved to Switzerland. At the age of 19, he got a job as an apprentice at a pearl exporting company. As a young boy, he got a handful of experience working for this company. He realized that the company wasn't really producing anything, but yet we're making a lot of profit just by distributing graded pearls to jewelers. Not long after, Hans received a letter from a friend about a job vacancy in Kuno-Korten. Kuno-Korten was a local watchmaking company located in La Chaux de Fonds. Although the benefits were much smaller than those from his current job, Hans quit his job nonetheless and accepted the offer to work over there as an English correspondent and clerk. Here, he had a closer view of how watches were made. It was during this time that he developed a deeper understanding of the watchmaking industry, and he started to develop ideas for his own watch company. A few years later, Hans moved back to Germany to serve in the army for 2 years. In the early 19th century, London was a major center of commerce and industry, and it was home to many watchmaking companies. After serving in the army for 2 years, he moved to London, where he started his own watch company. At this time, Hans had a whole lot of experience in marketing and watchmaking, and knew what it takes to lead a profitable business. Alongside his business plans, he also had plans for marriage. He met with a young lady, Florence May Crotty, and they got married in no time. On one particular day, Hans was having a productive discussion with his much older brother-in-law, Alfred Davis, and it was during this time that he shared with him his passion for watchmaking. The only challenge he had was financing it. Alfred Davis decided to take a risk on Hans's ideas. They formed a partnership, and in 1905, they began making watches under the name Wilsdorf and Davis Ltd. During their early years, they focused on building their reputation. Hans chose the brand name Rolex because he wanted it to be easily pronounceable in any language and short enough to fit on the face of a watch. Rolex was soon known for its precision, which contributed to its speedy ascent to the top. However, the unexpected happened. On July 28, 1914, the First World War began. This was an unfavorable time for many companies at the time, and some closed down as a result. However, Rolex saw an advantage in this. They manufactured trench watches for military use. Trench watches were a transitional design between pocket watches and wristwatches, incorporating features of both. Although this idea was a success, what came next led to major changes in Rolex. Due to heavy post-war taxes levied on luxury imports and high import duties, Hans moved the company from England to Geneva, Switzerland. In 1919, the company's name was officially changed to Montrez Rolex SA, and later, in 1920, to Rolex SA. Despite the success recorded in the earlier years, Hans still felt that wristwatches were yet unexplored, and they held the future of the watch industry. Hans was determined to lead a breakthrough in this area. However, there was a problem. Wristwatches were considered feminine, but they were not very durable or reliable, as they often stopped working or broke easily. Hans saw this as a challenge, though, and realized that an airtight watch case could be a solution for it. To address this, in 1926, a third-party case maker produced a waterproof and dust-proof watch for Rolex. This led to the advent of the revolutionary wristwatch model, the Rolex Oyster. The Rolex Oyster model was developed in 1926, and it was the first waterproof wristwatch. The Oyster featured a hermetically sealed case that could withstand water and dust. It also had a crown that could be screwed down to further protect the watch from water. Although this was a groundbreaking design and could change the whole concept of watches, Hans believed so much in marketing. He waited for the perfect time to unveil this revolutionary idea, and not long after, it came. Hans heard about a young British swimmer, Mercedes Glitze, who claimed she had swam across the English Channel and was ready to prove it to the world. This drew a lot of attention from the public, and Hans saw it as the perfect moment to reveal the Rolex Oyster. He convinced the woman to wear it on her necklace for the event, and he was confident that this would reveal the true potential of their product. Although she could only swim through 4/5 of the channel before she was pulled out of the chilling river, Rolex Oyster came out unaffected. The Daily Mail newspaper documented the swim and the aftermath. The story generated a lot of publicity and interest, and is considered to be one of the most successful marketing campaigns of all time. In 1933, a Rolex marketing campaign featured the famous motorcycle rider Malcolm Campbell wearing a Rolex Oyster while racing his motorcycle. The tagline for the campaign was, "No Rolex, no record." This marketing campaign was very successful, as it helped to further establish the watch as a symbol of speed and adventure. Soon, Rolex wristwatches were seen everywhere. Hans's desire to globalize Rolex was coming to fruition. However, it was around this time that his wife died. After the death of his wife, Florence May Wilsdorf, in 1944, Hans established the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation, a charitable organization. At this time, the season of pocket watches was already coming to a close, and wristwatches were taking over. Rolex was at the forefront of this movement, becoming one of the most recognizable names in luxury watches, with a reputation for quality and style that is second to none. In 1945, Rolex became the first watch brand to be awarded the Royal Warrant by Britain's King George VI. The Royal Warrant is a mark of quality that is only awarded to companies that supply goods or services to the royal household. Rolex achieved a major publicity victory in 1953 when Edmund Hillary and other members of his expedition successfully climbed Mount Everest while wearing Rolex wristwatches. The company never ceased to make efforts to advance its product. The Oyster Perpetual, which was the first self-winding, water-resistant wristwatch in the world, was formed. During the early 1920s, Rolex introduced several new models, including the Oyster and Prince lines. The Oyster line was particularly successful thanks to its waterproof case, which made it ideal for activities such as swimming and sailing. In 1956, Rolex introduced the Milgauss, a watch designed to resist magnetization, which can reduce accuracy. Rolex is the single largest luxury watch brand and the largest producer of certified chronometers. Its watches are sold in over 100 companies and are most popular among affluent consumers. Hans Wilsdorf died in 1960, leaving company ownership in the hands of the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation, a private family trust. This ensured that part of the company's finances went to charity. In Geneva, where the company is based, it is said to have gifted, among other things, 2 housing buildings to the social institutions of Geneva. In 2008, Forbes magazine named Rolex the world's most powerful brand. Rolex is the largest luxury watch brand in the world, with an estimated annual production of 2,000 watches. The company has its own foundry, where it produces gold alloys for its watches. The company also creates and develops its own movements, which are then meticulously assembled by hand in its workshops. The brand's most iconic models include the Datejust, Daytona, Explorer, GMT Master, Sea Dweller, Submariner, Yacht Master, and Day Date. Rolex's Daytona watch is inspired by racing. It was first introduced in 1963 and has been worn by some of the world's greatest race car drivers. The Daytona comes in various sizes and dial colors. Rolex's GMT Master watch is designed for dual time zones. It was first introduced in 1954 and is ideal for travelers who need to keep track of 2 time zones at once. Their GMT Master comes in various sizes and dial colors. As of 2021, Rolex was calculated with a network of 17 billion. Throughout the years, Rolex has continued to produce luxurious and iconic watches that are highly sought after by collectors and watch enthusiasts all over the world. What started as the ambition of an orphan boy went on to transform the whole of the watch industry. Today, Rolex is one of the most well-known luxury watch brands in the world, and their watches are synonymous with style and sophistication. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe.